Today, I'm going to share a little photographic year in review. Well, hey everyone, Hudson here. I hope that you're all enjoying the holidays as much as I and my family are. Good food, good people, just time enjoying food and family. You know, that's sort of what it is all about for me. I'm gonna take today to just kind of go through some of my favorite images, and I'll throw in a little bit of video stuff, some reminders of like what an awesome year 2022 was. It was so great to get back out in the field with photographers. I'm gonna share some of my favorite moments from both out in the field and at home, and I'll talk my way through some of the images and you know, just a little celebration of all things photographic. So I hope you'll come along on the journey with me. Really quick, before we take off on it, I just want to remind everyone that on January 10th, we're doing an office hours big free group get together, 10 a.m. Pacific time. You can sign up at hudsonhenry.com/office hours. But more importantly, when you run over there, submit an image. We're going to be looking at your best images from 2022. So an image that's meaningful to you, an image that you just really love, some image from 2022. The criteria are up there on the website when you run over to hudsonhenry.com/office hours. And whichever one is the absolute best, we're gonna give a Kase circular polarizer Wolverine magnetic filter, whether you prefer an 82mm or a 112mm if you're a Nikon Z type person. So, you know, and then we're gonna go through those images and talk about everybody's best images together as a group. So I hope you'll join us and sign up at hudsonhenry.com/office hours. All right, with that note, I'm just gonna jump in. I'm gonna talk about some of my favorite pictures of the year. It's been a really exciting year, and I think next year promises to be just as exciting, if not even more so. So some fun adventures. Maybe I'll talk about that a little bit at the end. So jumping in, the first big trip, and I'm not gonna go full screen on this. I want to leave it so that you can sort of see the exposure detail up here. So if you look up here, I've got it set so you can see what all my exposure parameters are, the whole exposure triangle, what lens and what camera. You can always see what camera because I label that in my file name. I put the date, the file, the camera, and the trip. So you can see the first big trip that I took of 2022 was into Death Valley with an awesome crew of photographers. And one of the first things that we did was head out into Mesquite Dunes in a bit of a sandstorm. We started early, you know, hoping to get out there for blue hour, and then the winds picked up even more intensely. And I know there were probably some people questioning my sanity, but it all worked out. We got out there, we were in the right spot. It was an epic dawn. I actually put this little video together because it was such an epic experience. I thought maybe I'd share this little video I created. I put this up in Approaching the Scene right after it happened, but it's worth watching again. It's only a couple minutes. The windstorm?
You made it very rough.
The windstorm in the dunes, you're not wanting a repeat of that?
I would go back any day.
There you go.
It was spectacular.
It was
a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
It was an adventure.
It was
an adventure.
It was an adventure.
Yeah, so it was fun.
Peter, were you sure the entire time we were going to be okay in the windstorm?
No, I wasn't. I really was questioning whether, you know, I was with the right person out in the wilderness. When you were smiling and laughing in the 50-mile-an-hour wind as we were getting sandblasted, I wasn't really sure. But then the light came out, and the light came on, and it was amazing, totally amazing.
thoughts on the windstorm?
It was the best experience of my life, except for, well, maybe the Hudson Henry workshop in Patagonia, or the Hudson Heavy workshop in Moab, or maybe the Hudson Heavy workshop in Tetons.
All right, so some shameless promotion there from CJ Glenn, my amazing friend and an epic photographer in his own right. So we as a crew had an awesome time. Bill, the whole crew, we just had an amazing crew, start to finish. One of the reasons why you want to go out in the sand dunes in those kinds of conditions is because it's so rare to get the dunes blown completely clean of footprints. And it's always exciting when there's a windstorm, but we got to experience the sandblasting of being in that windstorm on that one. One of the last morning of the workshop, there was a big windstorm in the night, and it calmed, and we went out in the morning in calm, sunny, warm, well, it got warm as we were out there conditions, and just had an epic time out there photographing. Great crew, and I will say, even despite going out into the windstorm, or maybe because of going out in the windstorm, about 65-70% of those people have either done another workshop with me or are getting ready to go in 2023, and I can't wait to get out those folks again. Then the next big trip was into Joshua Tree National Park, which is just a photographic playground, and we had a great crew out there, including one of my favorite people to take out in the field, the Manhattanite Vivian, who loves to go on adventures with Rick and I. And we just had a great time. And one of the things that we set up and really wanted to photograph was the Milky Way with Penguin Rock. And we even reserved campsites so we wouldn't have to disturb people on our way in to get up into there. And it was just a beautiful night. All the conditions were perfect for doing it. We had a great trip. It was wonderful. So that's one that I kind of pre-envisioned, and then it worked out. Sometimes you envision an image and you go to, and it's totally different, or you find something completely different. But that's one of those ones where months of preparation really did pay off. And then in the spring, we hit the Palouse, which is just such a gorgeous place, both in spring and fall. And once again, we had an awesome crew of people. Got to spend some time with Dr. Hootkins, or as he's better known as Hoot, who was a hoot to be with, along with just the whole crew. And we had some great light. We also had that rare thing that happens in the Palouse, an evening with just gorgeous light and almost no wind. The problem is a lot of the best images in the Palouse are long lens shots. Like you can see, this is at 400 millimeters. And I was just loving having my 100 to 400 on that trip. But often, if it's windy, all the tree limbs and everything and the leaves and the blades of grass are moving. So when you go to printer, you'll notice that things are a little bit blurry. Here's Palouse Falls. We went there. It was a bit overcast. The light wasn't spectacular. But, we said, well, let's do some long exposure. Let's play around. And then I noticed these crows flying around, and I slapped that 100 to 400 on my Z9 and was just kind of playing with, catching the focus on birds. I was still working with my autofocus settings. And then they flew in front of the falls, and I got this image that's one of my favorites of the year. It's vying for favorites of the year. They flew through in front of those falls so close, and with the long lens, I suddenly realized, looking at the world a little bit differently. This has been a year for me of looking at the world a little bit differently. And this one I was set with that shutter speed for capturing birds in flight at 1250th of a second. And just as they flew in front of that falls, everything just worked. And as I said, we just had some time with beautiful light. There's Charlie just reveling in it with Rick. I mean, everybody with grins from ear to ear. And almost no wind to get nice, sharp images. Not a lot of haze, except where you wanted it in the sunset. You don't get those every single day. There's sort of a Rick LePage. I was channeling Rick LePage with that minimalism at sunset. And then, I got home from the Palouse, and somewhere between there and spring and summer, that 800 millimeter lens landed on my doorstep that Nikon created, the 800 PF. And I have never had an 800 millimeter lens before. And of course, I went out and started playing with it, and it was shooting with it in ways it's not necessarily intended, and realizing, holy cow, this thing's hand-holdable. And it's really, really ridiculously sharp, and you can hand-hold it at slower shutter speeds than you would expect. This is in my yard, just outside the studio. I looked out the window and saw this doe sort of grazing in the woods behind my house. And so I was excited to jump in and take this lens to Costa Rica. And it was great. I met up with my good buddy David Archer, my wife, and kids, Stacy and Pike and Pepper came with. David had the new 400 2.8 with the built-in 1.4 teleconverter, and I had the 800. And we shot the heck out of Costa Rica with an awesome workshop crew. And I found that lens to just be astounding to work with. But I didn't use it all the time. Here's an example where if you look at the camera, I was out bouncing around with my kiddos before the workshop folks arrived, and this little spider monkey popped up near where we were eating lunch, and Stacy actually was off with the kids and had the Z50. So this is with the Z50 and its little kit, 50 to 250 millimeter lens. And I keep saying this camera is astounding, and it is. It's just a great little camera. I put this 3200 ISO image through DxO Pure Deep Prime. Stacy has a heck of an eye. And what a great shot. So you don't have to have the Z9 with the 800. Here I am with the 100 to 400 and my kids, and we got monkeys playing all around us. Again, there's things you can do with an 800 that you just go, wow, that thing is so sharp, and it creates images that are a little bit different, right? So, here I'm back to the 100 to 400. Here's a little monkeying around moment. This little monkey was in trouble. You can tell its sibling is like, uh-oh. I've seen my own kids kind of behave that way. The spider monkeys, these are the capuchin monkeys. So we've seen, actually this wasn't a spider monkey. This is a, oh my gosh, it is a spider monkey, capuchin monkey, howler monkey, sort of the big threes of Costa Rica's monkeys. The howler monkeys are the hardest to get good shots of. Here, throwing the 1.4 teleconverter on that 800 and seeing that it's still crazy sharp, even the bird way up there in the sky high above. I wish I had Ken Hauser here in the studio right now. I've forgotten this bird's name, but it was deep in the brush, and I'm hand holding it 125th of a second, and that 800 is just quite an astounding lens. The red scarlet macaws. This is vying for one of my favorite images of 2022 as well. You can see, shooting with the Z9, using DxO Deep Prime, I was working on birds when suddenly this crocodile came floating through. And literally, I was focused on shooting it, and David Archer said, "Kids, you might want to get away from the edge of the water." And I looked, and my kids are like, it's coming towards my kids. And David's like, I'm working on taking pictures of it, and David's protecting my kids. I felt like the worst dad in the world, but I did get a shot that I love. Oh, little young howler monkey in the rain. I was in deep rain. I had climbed up this trail and literally had gotten way deep in the woods, and this intense rainstorm, they don't call it a rainforest for nothing, hit, and I got completely drenched, and I had nowhere to put the 800. So I carried the Z9 with the 800 as if it had been in a bathtub with me, and it never showed the slightest hiccup performance-wise. Well weather sealed, well put together, this new gear. We just happened to stop at this spot along the coast where there were surfers out tearing it up, and the 800's a dream lens shooting sports and action at a distance. Clearly, it's just amazing. Paired with the Z9 and its autofocus tracking, especially using that hybrid autofocus mode with wide area going to 3D, is just a joy to use. And not a single one of these shots have I shown of this action stuff with the 800 or tripod or monopod even. I just handhold that thing. It's light, it's amazing. This is often known as the JCL, the Jesus Christ lizard, because it can walk on water. They run across the water. Beautiful toucan, howler monkey, mama and baby. This was actually shot with David Archer's 400 2.8 with the teleconverter, and I'm at 560 f4 with that teleconverter activated. Magnificent lens. A lot of people have been asking me, you know, am I interested in the new 600 millimeter Z lens? And I say, you know, if I was spending $15,000 on a lens, I'd save the money between the 400 and the 600. I'd get that 400 2.8. The 400 560 is such a usable focal range, and then you throw the 1.4 teleconverter on it, and suddenly you're at, you know, the equivalent of like 560 and what, 780, basically 800. Two more really, really usable focal lengths with wide aperture still, and just, you know, that's so usable. If you get the 600 and you throw the 1.4 teleconverter on it, all of a sudden you're up at 1120, and it's not all that usable. You know, it's usable with its own flip teleconverter, but, you know, I personally, the 400 is so usable and so beautiful, and it's also lighter and still hand-holdable. It's a little heavier than the 800, but it's still hand-holdable. Here's Pat Byler with Dennis. Dennis is the most amazing local Costa Rican guide. I can't wait to run workshops with him again in the future. There's some talk about maybe going to the Pantanal as well as back to Costa Rica. Baby howler monkey. Most of these are 800. You can just look up here and see what my settings are. You know, again, that 800, 125th of a second, and I've shot it consistently at a stop under this at 60th of a second and gotten, you know, probably 80% of my shots sharp. At a 30th of a second, a few shots in the burst sharp. It's just amazing vibration reduction handheld with this big lens. Proof positive that you can shoot a bird in flight with the 800, but you have to know where they're going to be. You know, they were coming back and forth from grabbing these nuts off the palm tree, and so I was in the right spot to capture that. Mama and baby spider monkey. It was just amazing. We didn't limit ourselves to using long lenses, though. We did a lot of macro work. You know, here is a tiny little frog. We had a lot of fun with the world of the small. We worked with some conservation organizations that are working to restore natural forest land from farming land, and they were working with us to help us get the animals in positions where we could photograph them. It was quite amazing. Just a beautiful, beautiful place to go shoot macro. This is a desktop that I use constantly now. These are these crazy little bugs, but you don't want to touch them. If you touch them, you will have a horrible, horrible itchy rash. I think this is a three-toed sloth. The three-toed and the two-toed sloths were wonderful to photograph. This is my favorite photo of them. Really rainy day, and then the rain stopped, the sun came out, and the sloths came down, and it was amazing photographing them. Again, with the world of the small, this little snake, that 105 millimeter macro on the Nikon Z9. And there's my friend Elizabeth, who, for just point of reference, you see how small this little snake is. And then Elizabeth did me a kindness and a disservice at the same time. Well, no, let's just call it a kindness. She started working with her little Leica Q2. She has two of them. She has the monochrome and she has the color Leica Q2. Now those are fixed lens little range finders that look like this. And we started talking about, well, maybe we should do some macro work with it. And I was playing around with her camera and shooting some macro shots, and then I photographed some people. And when I got the images, you know, that 48 megapixel sensor, that 28 millimeter 1.7 lens, I started looking through the images and I was raving about it, you know, to my wife, to Stacy, like, wow, that's a special camera. And this was, you know, Costa Rica was in, let's see, I'm going to take one of the images off my camera. It's the beginning of June. My birthday is late in June. Well, I had a Q2 show up. My wife went out and got me a used one, and this is at a concert, a Krungbing concert, open air with Pepper and Stacy and me showcasing that lens. This is on a kiteboarding beach where we go kiteboarding, my boy Pike, shooting it in color, shooting it in black and white. I love the way this camera renders out of focus details so beautifully, and yet what is in focus is so in focus. It's, you know, at 1.7, that's just nuts. It's an amazing 28 millimeter. It'll make you appreciate the focal length. This was right in the first week we got the camera, just shooting around with the family. This is a photo Stacy took of Pepper on her own belly in our backyard on a sunny summer day. You know, my aunt coming home, seeing the kiddos to the house, just, you know, look again, so sharp and so beautiful, bokeh out in the background. This is 4th of July, handheld, you know, 1/8 of a second, 1.7 with that lens. Pike, I was wanting to shoot it a little slow. I had him hold still, showing the fireworks going over the corner. And then, you know, my family took a little trip to Mount Rainier, and I slapped it on a tripod, stopped it down. You know, here we are, not even that stopped down, but everything's out at infinity from that little 28 millimeter, and shot a 1/2 second shot of this waterfall with a little neutral density. This is Christine Falls in Mount Rainier National Park, and just, you know, the quality of this image. There's a little wind blowing some of the leaves in this shot close into the falls is creating, but you look at that front to back, it's just nuts. I was like, holy cow, this is like a little wide angle weapon. And then you get that 1.7 aperture hiking around with the family, and I started playing around with black and white and looking at black and white through its viewfinder and really shooting in a little bit different way. So it doesn't replace my Nikon gear in any way, but it augments it. And it's the camera I'll pull out instead of the cell phone. If, you know, in the situations where I've got a little bag with me, or I'm comfortable carrying that little camera around, or I take it scouting in the middle of the day and shoot in black and white, as here with Rick LePage in Glacier National Park, the first trip where I really took it out on a wildlands trip and blended it, you know, working with the Z9. Here's the Z9 with the 100 to 400. Literally, I stopped at a place, parked the van. Rick and I he went in to talk to a ranger. I went to the restroom. I came out of the restroom, and there's this buck and just staring at me outside the bathroom door. That's the beauty of Glacier National Park. I can't wait to run our workshop there next summer. If you get to it, when this video drops, it may be sold out, but there's still 2 spots remaining as of me talking to you about it. That's going to be an epic trip. It's so spectacular there. So you can see I'm bouncing back and forth between the Q2 and the Nikon. The 800 was heavy in play. There's a lot of bears in Glacier National Park. This one stuck its tongue out at me and threatened Rick. Baby mountain goat, there's tons of mountain goats, Rocky Mountain, bighorn sheep. Beautiful macro work to be done. Back to the Nikon with the 105. And then, you know, there was this day where we went out to many glaciers, and we were at this just gorgeous lake, and the light was gorgeous in the middle of the day. I thought, well, let's shoot a bit of time lapse. And so I got the Leica and threw some neutral density on it, and thought, well, I'll shoot some black and white time lapse. I was just kind of experimenting. Again, this is my year of seeing things a little bit differently. And then I thought about it, well, I've already got neutral density on the camera. Let's think about doing 120-second exposure, which you can do in camera with the Leica Q2. And I slapped 16 stops of neutral density. This was a bright, bright day. So just experimenting, playing around, coming up with some new things. And I want to do more of that in this next year. This was the trip of beautiful animals sticking their tongues out at me. Another mountain goat up near the pass. Speaking of the pass, here's up at the pass of the Going to the Sun Highway. And there's a trail where you can hike along. You can actually see there's a bit of steel cable wrapped in garden hose to keep you protected as you come along this trail above the road. For anyone who wants to, it's a short walk. There's plenty of mountain goats and beautiful, you know, little open glades to photograph close to the car. There's everything your heart could desire there. It is a spectacular place that'll put a smile on your face. Bears, again, lots and lots of bears. beautiful light, mountain scenes galore. And then we got back to Portland. We ran a really fun group of people through the Portland area, the wildlands, the city. Had some really nice day, had a nice day around Mount Hood, down in the Columbia River Gorge with waterfalls. Had everything go according to plan for a full moon rise at sunset behind Mount Hood from one of my favorite locations. And then after that workshop wrapped up, we had my cousin Pilar show up with her new baby from Melbourne, Australia, baby Stella. And that got the whole family together, and it got me out playing around with the Leica again. It's just so fun to have those moments. She truly is the queen of the family as the baby of the family, and we're talking about having Christmas in Australia next year with her family and everybody gathering, so good times. Then down into the Owens Valley, and just, I mean, the Owens Valley is this place where clouds go insane. The views are bigger and grander than you can imagine. There was a bit of driving on the workshop, but I mean, cloudscapes galore. You know, this is where the highest point in the contiguous United States, Mount Whitney, is, which is behind these clouds up here. It's a place I've backcountry skied and climbed to the summit of multiple times. And just the granite in this valley, you know, this is in the Alabama hills. And you get an idea for what happens with the sky in this place. This is a place frequented by Ansel Adams and John Muir. You know, it's a legendary place, and it was so fun to run a workshop here. We had a great crew again, run by Rick LePage. This is in a burnt section of forest in the valley proper. David Archer, this is out near where Ansel Adams took his photograph of the boulder field near Manzanar. CJ Glynn, Charlie Johnson. We had a beautiful night that night. Just a spectacular location. I remember this was coming back from the Bristlecone Pines, and I literally was like, stop the car, the sky's going insane. And we had to find our way over the ridge to get a view of it. Mobius Arch, a really famous spot in the Alabama hills. There's David Archer shooting it. This is, oh my gosh, I know the name of that arch, but it's escaping me at the moment. You'll just have to forgive me. Up in the Bristlecone Pines, and this is that sunset. There was a beautiful bristlecone we were able to put. Here's Harris lining up on Mobius Arch once we got the workshop running with that ridge line in the background. He got a beautiful sunstar shot this night. This is everyone setting up to do a blue hour image of Mobius Arch to put with the Milky Way that we would shoot just a little ways away, unobstructed later, to composite in. There's Carl and Ken and Rick hanging out. They had a different angle they wanted for the foreground shot for the Milky Way. Carl goofing around, getting in the way. There's getting in the way of their shot, just laughing. There is the highest contiguous point in the United States right there, Mount Whitney. That's it. It's much higher than these points that look like they're higher because it's further back. It's the high point of the Sierra. Here we all are beaming our moves up at the North Star to get our polar alignment for the Milky Way to put behind Mobius Arch. It was a beautiful night. Everything just really lined up as predicted. You know, and I was messing around. I was thinking a couple mornings were just so clear and so beautiful, and the light, the pre-dawn light, was playing out so nicely on those hills around the foothills of the Sierras. I whipped out the 800 and did some landscape work and photographed the moon with it, which is just so much fun. Up in the Bristlecone Pines again, just some playing around with the Leica, kind of scouting, walking around. There's Karen, Charlie, Rick in the boulder field near Manzanar. David Archer up at Convict Lake. We had an epic morning up at Convict Lake. Oof. There we got Ken Mueller and Bill. And then Rick and I did a couple of workshops. We took a little break, and then we got back, and we actually left El Jefe, sort of in between the Owens Valley, El Jefe, the Sprinter van, in between the Owens Valley and Jackson, and then whipped back in, grabbed it, and ran a workshop, actually back-to-back workshops in Jackson, and with a little bit of time in Yellowstone. There's Steve, my good buddy Steve, shooting with Rick, It was epic, epic, epic trip. We had such a good time. We had great light, good group of people. The moose were worried about the bears, but we did see a few bears. They were up in trees. Pronghorn, running wild. Just, you know, it's so fun to have a camera, a little autofocus and a lens that'll get you in tight. We did a lot of low light work, late nights, early mornings. This is a blue hour shot. You can see a star still there, but back behind the Grand Teton at the Mormon Row. Just so crisp and sharp. It was such a beautiful morning. And then that same morning, unbelievably, as dawn struck, crazy clouds came in just to kind of light things up. We had beautiful encounters with bison, probably closer up than we should have. There's a little fence between us, but I don't think it would stand up to a bison if they got ornery. You can see there's the fence. Bison would go through that, but Chris, that was William Wallace, who I spent such a good time with in Patagonia pre-pandemic, and it was great to have him back out there. Just really, really, really good times. We had some nice light at Oxbow. The water was low, not as low as the year before, but pretty low. Brad, big smile on his face. We had some nice fall color. There's Chap. Chap's going to be going to Cuba with us. There's the Snake River overlook on a gorgeous morning, a little focus stacking, 3-frame focus stack. Schwabacher Landing that same morning. And you know, I would never think that I'd be so happy with images of a mallard duck, but the light was so beautiful. And I actually shot a little 10-bit 4K video of this duck.
There's that squirrel.
The astounding thing is, it's handheld with the 800. Let me.
Is this our last stop? Yes. Stop. My focus keeps jumping from him to his reflection.
I think that's one of the interesting things you heard one of the workshop members there say, my focus keeps jumping from it to its reflection. You know, that's one of the things with eye detect, and that's where maybe you'll use that hybrid focusing mode to use recall function settings hold to lock a single point on the eye that you actually want, or jump into 3D tracking to put that on the eye that matters to you. But it was just beautiful, and I think that just shows, you know, at 800 millimeters in good light, I just got down, I sat on the grass and put my elbows on my knees and balanced that 800 millimeter and shot that handheld without a tripod. And the vibration reduction in that 800 millimeter lens allowed me to get that clear a video. There's Jim and Philip. Jim and Philip are going to be back with us this year in I think in Yellowstone, I think, or Glacier. Well, it might be Glacier. I don't know. I'm going to have to look at it. But I know the two of them are going to be back on another exciting wildlife workshop. We had so much fun with them. This mama moose. This was a complicated scene to try to get a clear shot. There was so much brush. And I actually really, I do like this image. This is the one shot that I got of her out in the shallows. Rick and Chap. We had some just beautiful, beautiful light with the buffaloes one morning. Speaking of beautiful light, we had this dawn at Mormon Row where it was crystal clear, and then the storm blew up to the north and came over us, but the light was still coming in from the east from the dawn, and it was just this drama. And I remember seeing the guys and seeing the light and saying, stop, and just snapping a frame with my Q2 of them. Unfortunately, I had bumped the shutter dial while it was on my side to 2,000th of a second instead of the auto mode, so I shot it at 6400 ISO. So, but you know, you run it through DxO Pure Deep Prime, and there you go, pure raw. Mrs. Moose in fall color. Carrie out shooting the barns. It's an epic bit of polarizing on this fall colored tree with the road as the light was getting a little more harsh. And then it was home and the holidays, and I gotta say Stacy's Halloween outfit is one of the best ever. There's Pike as an Ninjago, and Pepper is Ariel from The Little Mermaid. And this is one of Pepper's friends from kindergarten, Eloise and Pike and Pepper at the Japanese gardens in the fall color. So it's just been a great year, and I'm ending it on a few family shots because that's what's really the most important thing, especially at this time of year. And I hope that all of you are still thinking creatively, still enjoying time, photographically, exercising those skills, practicing, but first and foremost, spending time with family. Good food, good family. That's what it's all about. I hope you're all enjoying that as much as we are. We're having a quiet one around home with my grandmother with my mom, the kids' grandma, and my aunt. And I hope all of you are having just as good a time. Remember, on the 10th, we're doing that office hours best of 2022. Sign up at hudsonhenry.com/office hours. Submit that image, your favorite photo of 2022. We're going to be giving away a really, really nice magnetic Wolverine Kase circular polarizer to the best image that we think, the group of us that run this, David, Darren, Woody, Rick, and I. And we'll just enjoy going through everybody's best images of 2022. We're all going to submit images too. So I hope to see you there. Enjoy the holidays. Stay safe, stay creative. We'll see you next week.